Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Ready.Set.Midmarket, the podcast for all things mid-market, business, and IT. I'm joined as usual by my co-host, Samara Lynn. She's the senior editor of MES Computing.
Hello.
Hello. And we also have a very important guest today, Branko Mitkovski. He's the owner of Bit Networking, and he's also a 27-year veteran of as a VP of IT. Welcome, Branko.
Thank you.
So let's get this started, folks. It's not very often that we get to speak with a former VP of IT that was involved in a cyber incident. And Branko is willing to talk with us about that. This happened recently in the spring of March of 25. And Branko, I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you. And if you can kind of walk us through, give us a picture of the organization you were in, what the size and scope of that organization looked like, what the preparedness looked like heading into it, and then kind of walk us through what happened. And Samara and I will ask you a few questions in terms of, how you were able to respond to it, how your, executive teams reacted, how your vendors responded to it, and things of that nature.
Sure. I came from an organization that was about 350 users across 10 offices. And I would guess about 30 to 40% were just fully remote. It was a great organization. It still is. For the preparedness, we had gotten hit about 8 or 9 years ago. We were able to get out of that one very easily. So we were prepared for that because then we were using things like malware bytes. There wasn't a lot of budget. And after that, I would assume typically in most organizations our size, once you get hit, it's, checkbooks wide open for whatever it takes not to get hit. We were using CrowdStrike and 2 other tools, which I won't disclose just for their security purposes, monitoring the network, their whole Azure infrastructure. So we'd been ready for years to hopefully not get hit. What happened was in March, we got an alert that an end user machine was running some commands. I sent it over to my SOC and I was like, hey, is this okay? Can you check it? This, that, and the other. The SOC checked it, said that they had cleared the machine, said it was fine. The issue was they were running Linux commands on a Windows machine and it was just an end user, not an IT person. So later, after the dust had settled, my senior analyst said, yeah, we think that was actually the beginning of the hack. And what happened was they used those commands to get into a server that was on the network, but under a workstation, not on domain. It had not been built out yet. And they crawled the network for about 2 weeks. And about 2 weeks later, I got an alert about a Kerberos ticket being copied. And I sent it to my SOC, and that SOC had told me that it was a false positive, not a big deal, but that was them replicating AD. For me, the biggest thing is, I see these alerts because we all get alert fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
And we get these alerts, and when those come out, it's not alert fatigue. It's, hey, this looks like something to me. So I would tell anyone that's in the shoes I was in, whatever you do, gut instinct, trust it. Because it doesn't take anything to lock a user's machine, brick it, change your password, replace it, whatever. That is pennies to the dollar of what it takes. But we got hacked by one of the bigger groups. Luckily, after the first time it happened a number of years ago, we got cyber insurance. And our carrier was really good. We called them, we told them what happened. They set us up with 2 different teams. One team was going to negotiate with the hackers, or the threat actors as they call them, and the other team was a remediation team. I could not speak more highly of my remediation team. The other team that was negotiating, I didn't have a lot of interaction with, but remediation team, we were on it right away. We found that same day, we found that we had crawled the network with some of their tools. We found this machine. I was like, that's a new file server. It's not on the domain yet. As soon as I jumped on it, we ran a few commands, and he's like, they have an RDP session open and are probably watching what you're doing. So at the firewall level, we were able to block traffic in and out there. And then we started full remediation, which was changing the Kerberos ticket every single day for 2 weeks straight. You only need to do 3 of them, but we did it every day just as a precaution.
Yep.
We also had people change passwords. Within 2 weeks, I think everyone had to change their password 5 or 6 times. And we went from 9-character minimum password length to 12, and it had always been complex password. And can't reuse the last dozen, I believe.
How did that go over with the employee base?
Most of them are fairly annoyed.
Yeah.
Understandably, it was bad because I was at home and I had a Post-it note on my desk.
Yeah.
The thing you shouldn't do, but when you're changing it twice a day, you're like, which iteration of which password am I trying to use today? and I can't lock myself out of the network. So, they're fairly annoyed. They're like, I just did it last week. I understand. We're trying to protect the network. At the end of the day, they were fairly understanding what we were trying to do. Eventually, what ended up happening was they had gotten, when they were on that machine, they had gotten my credentials and they were using my credentials and actually RDP'd into my machine. And I made one mistake that I never thought about as being a mistake. I named my laptop Branko with some of the specs of the machine. Right. So I would tell people in the future, I'll never do that again. Don't name your machine anything close to your name.
Yeah.
Use generic like everybody else. But they were on my machine running Linux commands. We had 2 sets of backups, and one set was encrypted. The other set was just backing up virtual machines. They had actually deleted my Azure blob storage of the backups of all my virtual machines right before they started encrypting the hosts. They were able to encrypt 2 of the 3 hosts, but they weren't able to encrypt most of the VMs. They encrypted about half, which is about 30. Luckily, of the 30, I would guess 15 were old historical data or things that we were they were coming to a close. They were being sunset. It wasn't life or death. We got them. A few were. So we ended up paying because it was within our budget. We ended up, doing what we had to do to get those machines back up and running. I won't disclose their number, but we ended up paying a small amount. But it was all covered by the insurance. So today, everything's back up and running. It's all in hindsight. I was fortunate. I had 3 new hosts for my virtual environment. So we were able to just spin those up, get them up to the latest and greatest and patched, and the rest is really history for us. It was the longest 2 months of my life, I think.
Yeah. Can you bring us back to the cyber insurance team? And I'm not an IT leader, right? I know enough to be dangerous. Can you bring us back to the cyber insurance team? How quickly did the remediation team get going for you? And then the second question I have is on the negotiation team. You said you weren't that involved in that piece of it. Was that held pretty much with legal and CFO and the CEO? What did that look like?
It was held with legal mostly. I work with legal, and I was on the email string, but it was really up to him talking to the board and deciding on numbers. And it was an orchestrated attack. I know someone that worked in our office, and her husband, the company he works for works with another company in the same field we're in. They got
Yeah.
hit the same day we did.
Okay.
So, we knew of 2 companies that had gotten hit at the exact same time. So it was an orchestrated attack. But the remediation team was within hours. I was told, this is my contact. Here's his email. We started up a chat string. We just created Google accounts so that nothing was on the domain. That way in case there were still remnants of something, they couldn't track it or read it or anything. So everything was done via text or Google account. And we just did a Google chat, and we just went from there. It was a great experience as far as the remediation team. They were on it. They had people. I had one contact, and he had specialty people in the background. He was very knowledgeable. It wasn't until like 5 or 6 days in that he's like, I've exhausted my resources on what I know how to do here. Let me ask so and so. And even then, when he did that, most people were on the line and in the chat within a few hours. We
And
had
is this
some
the first
replication
team that
issues.
you had? Is this the first cyber insurance company that you'd worked with? Okay.
Yeah, the first time we didn't have it, we ended up having finding a decryptor the first time a number of years ago, and then it was just we would decrypt it and it would re-encrypt. So at that point, it was decrypt it, and then it was Silence was king of the castle. So we went with Silence, and as soon as we decrypted and installed Silence, it killed the ransomware attacker, and we were just able to clean up. So I put that on everything, and we just sailed forward without thinking twice about it for another almost 10 years.
So when you said the first thing that really tipped you was not the alerts because you got alert fatigue, you said. When there's a Linux running on a Microsoft, is that what really tipped you? And what would you have done differently today? Just
It was
listening to
Linux
someone.
running on Microsoft because I know the user. Being there over 2 dozen years, I know the user, and I was like, "He doesn't know how to do that."
Yeah.
Branko, just really quick. So the sock that initially flagged the alert as a false positive. Now, is that the same group that helped you with the remediation negotiation?
It is not, but it is the same group that got us through the first ransomware attack.
Okay. So you employed a SOC and another entity to help you with
Yeah,
this
well,
attack.
our SOC was, after the first ransomware, we found out that the cost of a SOC was less than me finding a senior analyst, a cyber expert. And I had a team that was 24/7, right? I had a senior analyst, I had, junior analysts at night when there's a lot less traffic and all that, but they cost me less than 6 figures. And when you hire someone, and I'm not deterring people from hiring, we were of the size that we couldn't afford someone that would be there 24/7. At some point, the person needs a vacation, is sick, time off, sleeps. When you have a SOC, you don't need, there's someone that's always on. They had 2 analysts running all night.
So the analysts were part of the SOC.
Yeah, the analysts are all part of the SOC. And then when we called our insurance company, they gave us a remediation company that worked with it. And we work with the SOC because they had our CrowdStrike and everything. So they were able to give the remediation company full access to that. And they were able to work hand in hand to figure out where it started and how.
So there were really three components that really helped you get out of this attack. And that was having internal alerts, the SOC, and the cyber insurance who helped you with the negotiations.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like I said, the reality is nowadays it's not if I get hit, it's when, right? When you have companies, Fortune 10 and 50 companies getting hit, you don't necessarily hear about it. Equifax got hit earlier this year or last year, right? You have companies like that get hit. Mid-market companies don't really stand much of a chance.
Right.
You don't have the pockets deep enough, and it just part of the life now, unfortunately.
What was the time frame, would you say, from the first alert to when you were fully operational again?
First alert about the Linux command was 2 weeks after that's when we got hit. From the day we got hit till we were 100% operational with everything's back online, about 5 to 6 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Now, that being said, we had a lot that was already functional. Our file servers were not hit. Our ERP was not hit. Our Azure infrastructure wasn't hit. And one of the reasons was we had a one-way replication from on-prem Active Directory to Entra. They kept trying to change passwords at the Entra level, but it wouldn't replicate back, so it wouldn't let them do it.
Right.
So it was about 5 weeks, and that was just minimal. It was our historic SharePoint site that a few people use, and a few other servers. We had a homegrown app that we were kind of delving away from, but we needed some historical data from that. It wasn't life or death. It just makes life easier. So it was, I would say, about 15% of our working environment that we would have loved to have up and running was down during that time.
Wow. And I just got one more question, Adam. I'll shift back to you. And Adam, I'd like to know your thoughts on this too. I always think to myself, when I hear about these types of attacks, you do your negotiation and they offer to decrypt, you pay them. What happens if you pay an attacker? They'll say, okay, once you pay us this amount, we're going to decrypt. And they just don't do it. Like, how are you going to guarantee that they were going to decrypt after they were paid?
It's actually a concern we had.
Right.
But we were told by the negotiating company that the threat actor was using, it was a well-known threat actor. Their name escapes me today, but they're a well-known threat actor. And they actually, the way a lot of money they make is they do it as a software as a service. They're not necessarily doing it. They're saying, Adam calls out and he's like, hey, I want to hack. And they say, you can use the tools, we get X percentage.
Wow.
So we were told that they do it software as a service. And if Adam doesn't keep his word when he gets paid to leave us alone, then they will go after anything Adam ever does.
It's like a well-oiled business.
They said a lot of the threat actors are not the main people that have written it and done it initially. They're just farming out their software now.
They're the intermediary. They're like the bully in the school that says you can pick on this person, but only for this long. That's crazy.
They're like, if you get paid, you're going to honor your word and you'll leave them alone.
Oh my gosh.
One of the concerns we had was, A, if we pay, will they leave us alone? And B, if we pay, will that put a target on our back by other threat actors on, oh, well, this company's going to pay, so let's go hit them. And they said most of the time, as much as they're deceitful because they're doing what they're doing, they told us most of the time, once they get paid, they leave you alone, forget about it, and it's put to bed.
There's plenty of companies out there for them to target, I assume.
Yeah. In the billions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I've learned a lot in just the short 15 minutes here. So, Branko, what would you say, trust your instincts is one thing, but, we're serving mid-market, we're serving your peers, right? So what are some pieces of advice you'd have, and maybe even in further preparedness, or what if somebody doesn't have cyber insurance right now? What is your statement to that?
If you have the right tools in place, we had tools that were monitoring the network. We had tools that were monitoring each machine. We had 3 cyber tools in place at all times on every machine. If you have those tools in place and you have your alerts set up properly, I think that while people say that it's expensive, it's less than a cost of a mid-level employee annually. It's worth its weight in gold. I mean, when I was working with the remediation team, the first thing they did was create 6 jump boxes in my new virtual environment. So 6 people could be on there at one time, just chugging along. And I was like, man, that's the size of my whole team. And I just doubled my team for however long this interaction is. So I would say that it's an invaluable tool to have. And especially if you do things right, right? If you have conditional access set up for logging in through anything, we happen to be an Azure shop. But if you do conditional access to log in, if you have the tools in place, it's the cost of the cyber insurance is not as much as people would think. You just have to find the right carrier and get the right scope for it. Target you based on how much you make and how much they think you can afford. They ask for initially 3% of what our gross revenue was, which isn't. I mean, it's not like they were asking for whatever our gross revenue was.
Sure.
I'm sure if they hit a Fortune 50 company, that number skyrockets compared to mine, right? But they asked for 3%, and they ended up settling for about 0.5%.
How did you even know that? I mean, a lot of mid-market companies are private organizations. Their financials aren't out like a public company. How do they even find this information out?
I was told that's one of the ways. One of the ways they look at it is they will, when they're getting in your network, that's what they do. Is they will scour. Oh, let's look at the finance drive, and they'll see what numbers you have, and they'll decide what they think you can afford. And they realize that no one's ever going to pay the first number, so they inflate that number just so that you can talk them down to the number they're happy with.
Yeah. That's negotiation tactics. Absolutely. It's like
Yep,
buying a house.
negotiation 101, right?
Yeah. I mean, you say 3% doesn't sound like a lot, but that could be organizations' raises for the next year. I mean, that's a significant amount of money.
It 100% is, right?
Yeah.
If it's $100 million company, 3% is 3 million. That's more than raises probably.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Um, but it's not like in our case, I said it was 3%. It's not like, hey, you guys make 100 million and we're asking for 50 because they know they'll never get any of it. They're trying to get paid. They'll give you a number that they think is legit and that'll work for them and that you can swallow and you negotiate down.
And off they go and hit someone else in a couple weeks later, I assume.
Weeks or days. The remediation company told me that he's like, it's funny because during summer vacation, nothing happens. He's like, because they want to take vacations too. He's like, they're going to hit you on holidays. He's like, you're going to get hit on Thanksgiving. You're going to possibly get hit New Year's, Christmas, 4th of July in the United States. Any of the major holidays, he said that's when they hit because most people are not paying attention because they're off with their families enjoying life.
Wow.
So my final question is was the organization you were with able to take some positives out of this and make some changes going forward? Or you said there were some homegrown systems and things that weren't being used that much. Were they able to say, okay, let's take a whole look at what our environment looks like and shut all these things down because we don't need these anymore and kind of even a mini reset moving forward?
We absolutely were. We were able to we shut down a lot of servers, anything old and historic that was just not needed. I didn't delete them. I just shut them off so you can't touch them. And then we hardened our Azure infrastructure heavily. We had some conditional access, but we went very heavy on conditional access. We have some people who travel internationally, so we did international travel policies that you'd have to put in effect the day they leave, and you could take them off the day they came back. But those policies also didn't allow them. If you were going to whatever England, if you went to England during that time, you couldn't log into your machine in the United States. It was one or the other. So there was a very fine line you had to dance with travel and people being on planes trying to use the Wi-Fi because they could not get their Microsoft products. But yeah, we built some more firewall rules. We built some more a lot of Azure hardening. Put a better firewall in Azure instead of just a basic one, and everything was it was a lot more complex, but it was a lot better.
Did it end up costing a significant amount of investment that might not
I would say it was still under 120,000, and a lot of that was the consulting fees of paying someone to do it because I had a team of 6 total, including myself, and most of them are end user, and I had a developer. It was just me doing it, and one person can only do so much at a time. It was just, let's get this fixed ASAP, and move forward.
That's the long 2 months you went through, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Understood. I can't thank you enough, Branko, for being open and discussing this story with us. And just so the audience knows, we ran into each other at an MES lunch a few weeks ago, and he said, "Hey, I'd like to tell this story here and go on the podcast." And I said, "Let's do it. Let's hear it directly from an IT leader and someone that's just been through it." So I really appreciate that. What's next for you, Branko, in terms of what you're looking to do from a career standpoint right now?
I enjoy IT leadership. I'm currently on the market. I'm looking for the right opportunity for myself. I've taken a few weeks off just so I can spend a little time. I have a 5-year-old, so spend a little time with the family, enjoy the rest of the summer. But now he's back in school, so back on the market I go.
Now you're itching to get back in it.
Yeah, you start to miss it. And let's be real, with IT, the longer you're out of it, the more you miss, right? The more you miss as far as learning and keeping up on things. Things just take a while.
Well, I also think, from a marketability standpoint, you can come in and say, I've been through it recently, and this is the steps we've taken. These are the lessons learned, and this is what I think needs to happen in here to further harden this organization before we move forward. I think that's a big positive.
I couldn't agree more. My old chairman was he's a wonderful man, and one of the things that I had asked him about doing this podcast before I left, and he's like, yeah, he goes, we talked about not revealing too much information about the organization, but he said if we can help any other company avoid what we had to deal with, I'm all for it. He's published in a few magazines for the industry, and he spoke of it in those. Not much. I was probably more in depth because I was in the trenches, but he spoke about what happened, some of the things we tried to do, and we were always a company of, if someone can learn from our mistake, then that's great. Let's not let someone else struggle the way we did, especially when it's not a competitor, when it's a threat actor.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's true also. I mean, you think about, I've been with MES just over 5 years. There's a lot of companies in the mid-market, but they need to kind of stick together because they're all dealing with similar situations as far as resources and budget and things of that nature. So, and to your point, yeah, now it's definitely hitting mid-market firms. It's not just your Fortune ones that you're seeing making the Wall Street Journal headlines. So you guys kind of have to learn from each other and share your information to stay ahead of things.
April was my first one, and that's one of the things I loved about it, is just everyone in companies similar sizes just talking about the things they go through and deal with. And in the boardroom I was in, one other person had told me they had just gotten hit within the last year as well. Right? But it's not something most people want to talk about because it's a negative stain on your reputation.
It's a reality today. It's not. Yeah,
it is.
Right. Well, I was going to say,
one if you haven't been hit.
The more companies are protected, the more the supply chain stays intact, because another mid-market company could be your partner. You could be sharing software, and data.
100%.
So, yeah.
Well, like I said, Branko, thank you so much for taking the time with Samara and I and Ready.Set.Midmarket and to share your story. Certainly appreciate it. If anything we can do to help you moving forward, let us know, and we'd love to have you back at an MES very, very soon.
Awesome. Thank you guys for your time and letting me share my experience.